one thing I've noticed is that we think of coloring sometimes as something kind of facile, but if you think about it, like the Color Me Calm, like adult coloring books, like that's a burgeoning product right now, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that engaging fine motor control does have a calming effect as you're engaging, executive functions in the front of the brain that can help you get regulated back from a dysregulated state. So, like, when my kids wanted to color something, and oftentimes, like, they wouldn't like anything that I had, you could just Google such and such and then add coloring pages, so like SpongeBob coloring pages, and you're going to get a million hits on that. So just with this little creature here, one thing you can do to make things a little bit more interesting is have your kids try to do some color blending following color wheel colors. Like, in other words, if I'm going to go Roy G. Biv, then I might do a stripe of red, pretty solid, but then as I go up, I'll have like let it taper off, lighten up the pressure there, then take my orange and overlap the area that I just did with lighter red, and then start to fill in a more saturated orange, pressing harder, that is. And if you know your rainbow, Roy G. Biv, yellow is your next color. Overlap that on your orange a little bit. Then green. You can really blend any color into another. It's just more satisfying to do colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, and also colors in the same family, like blending in all warm colors or all cool colors. Then I'll do my blue. Now, when you are trying to get kids to engage with a coloring project in order to sort of get regulated, it really is helpful to have a good example done, of your own coloring. If you can afford it, it is doubly helpful to do the coloring along with the student, because you bond over that process of doing it together. So I've turned this little bat creature here into a nicely blended Okay, so next I'm going to talk about doing a yarn twist. So it's particularly neat if you can get a ball of what's called variegated yarn, which means it changes color as it goes along. And so to do a simple twist, like, again, this is sort of the same premise, like engaging fine motor control, executive function to help regulate, working with your fingers. Now, a lot of kids like to braid, or else they used to, but it's time consuming. So if you want to do something that can be quicker and it's easier, just cut yourself off 2 pieces of yarn, same length, and then knot both sides on the ends. I've got a knot at both ends. Then I'm going to tape down one of the ends to the tabletop. Put the tape before the knot to hold it in place, and then take a pencil and put it in the other side before the knot so it won't just pull off. And I'm going to hold it with one hand and spin it with the other, just like a propeller. Hold it out straight and just keep spinning, and it'll get tighter and tighter. Now, a good rule of thumb, this will be tight enough when you let it relax a little bit and it knots up on its own. So once it's that tight, you can sort of find the midway point, pinch it there, fold it in half, and then let go. Straighten it out, let go again, straighten it out, and use my scissors to cut it free. I'm pinching that so it doesn't come unwound. Then just knot this. Now you've got a nice twisted yarn string, much faster than braiding it that length would have taken. Okay, next. So next is the Create a Puzzle, just blank puzzles. You can find these on Amazon, schoolspecialty.com, Oriental Trading has them. Just find the best price there. So from a blank puzzle, you know, if you just tell kids to just color on this, then, I mean, what my kids tended to do was just color each puzzle piece a different color. Now, this is a pretty big sheet. You can get them at 4x6. If you have a really big sheet like this is like 9x12, you could break it up into quarters and have the kids each do a quarter, or 1 quarter at a time, across 4 times that you need to get regulated. Now, if you want to do something a little bit more involved, you can use any printout. This is just an inkjet printout that I had from a long time ago, and as long as the back of that picture has a coating of pencil graphite, then you can treat it as a carbon copy paper. What do I mean by that? Put your puzzle down, picture over top. I think I'll do this at an angle. Use a little bit of tape to keep it from moving. And then we're going to trace that. Now, this picture's been used before, so it's already got lines on it, but what am I tracing here? I'm tracing the contours, basically the outlines of everything. All right, I think that's about everything. that's probably a little hard to see on camera, so what a lot of my students used to do was to actually go over these lines and darken them a bit. That's absolutely fine. This also gives you the opportunity to correct anything that you didn't trace well. Correct any mistakes. Now for these puzzles, I have noticed that they have sort of a glossy surface to them. So regular markers will write on them, but they will smudge if they're still wet and you happen to touch them. So you might want to be careful about that. I wouldn't use colored pencils on a glossy surface like this. I personally have used Sharpies, but I know that's not the best solution for young kids. So I would just say be careful with the regular markers and you should be fine. Or at least with the washables, you can wash them. So once you've got those contours all outlined, you can start coloring this. Yeah, it does smudge a little bit. One thing that's helpful for little ones is if you can get a sheet of paper and try to teach them to rest their wrist on that rather than on the bare surface. That kind of helps keep the mess down as well. And like I said, good practice is to have good examples already done. So using a 5x7 blank puzzle, did these using that rose and a combination of colors. For this one, I painted some Mod Podge on it, or white glue, once the marker was dry, just to keep it more permanent. But this one, you can easily disassemble it. Makes a great gift. So for our next idea, we're going to do some perler beading. Perler beads you can get from A.C. Moore's, Michaels, Walmart has them, Amazon of course. Just shop around. So each kid gets a pegboard. They make them in different shapes. Now as to what do I put on this, this is another one of those things you can endlessly Google, but I do happen to have this book of patterns that you can just lay your pegboard directly on the page and it'll show you what color to put where. So let's just find a little tiny one to, yeah, a little heart. And since it really doesn't matter where on the grid I put this, I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to stray from the colors they're using and just do multiple colors. Now, again, for the little kids, I would keep this to a small size because it can be really tedious to make a picture of a seriously big size. But you might have kids that enjoy that tedium. We were discussing the other day about how some kids actually like to, when confronted with a huge container of these beads, they want to sort them by color. And I'm like, yep, all 30,000? Okay. That in itself, that sorting, that can be a way for kids to regulate themselves. So we have to try not to judge things as like facile or silly, when to someone else it could be something valuable for them to do. And actually, I would argue it's sort of a form of self-medication to want to do something like that, sort of extensively like that. Now, I can do decently with just dropping these in by hand. You'll notice they fall over here once in a while. But if you like, they do sell also on Amazon. I haven't seen if these are at brick and mortar stores, but they have these tweezers. Now, if you're going for grabbing specific colors, this is not necessarily time saving, but for certain kids this might help if they haven't got that pincher grip down pretty well. Just for speed's sake, I'm gonna switch back to your fingers. Okay, got my little heart. Then I'm going to need a piece of wax paper. This will just keep the beads from sticking to the iron. And my standard clothes iron here, put to the highest dry setting. And then careful how you're applying pressure. You just want to get pressure applied to the beads, not to the pegboard. If you hit the pegboard, excuse me, if you hit the pegboard, excuse me, if you hit the pegboard, then you can melt those pegs down and it can be harder to reuse the pegboard. So I'm applying firm pressure, but gently. And you can sort of look and see when they've melded together. Also, very important to have good examples. So here's two that I made. All right. Okay, and our last idea here is using shrink dink film. So this again, Amazon. I've seen it sometimes at Walmart, probably Oriental Trading. I've also heard that like the clear salad boxes you can get at the grocery store, if you cut the lids off, that flat part of the plastic will also shrink. So if we're doing this with a kiddo, unless it's already roughened, like some of the shrink art film that you can get already has texture on it. If it's smooth like this, then you will need to sand it. So I just use a piece of paper or cardboard, something to just keep your work surface from getting sanded. And you're literally just going to take a piece of sandpaper and sand that smooth surface. Now you absolutely can do both sides. I've done pieces where I did different colors on both sides, but I'll skip that for making this expedient. And I'm going to need a toaster oven, or a regular oven will work too. But I do happen to have a toaster oven, so I'm going to bring that to bear. Now, what to put on my shrink art? Again, any kind of printout that has easily identifiable contours, like this star in the middle, will work perfectly. So, because I've roughened the surface with the sandpaper, now pencil is going to go on there nice and smooth. Okay, now I've got the coloring done. I find it's satisfying to really darken those contour lines. It just makes it look cleaner. All right, now I'm going to cut this out, but before I do, I know that I want to hole punch this to sort of hang it, so I am going to leave a circle. You could trace something circular like a coin you could trace, but then I'm going to cut this to shape, and like I said, I could have done both sides if I wanted. Maybe different colors on the other side. All right, done cut out. Now, in order to make it hangable, I'm going to need to hole punch that. So just any single hole punch will work. Then, I'm going to put it in the oven. Now, how long you put it in, I don't give precise directions on that. I would just say that you just keep an eye on it constantly, and for bigger pieces in particular, you'll notice that the outer edges shrink before the center does. Oftentimes this causes the piece to curl up. It will 9 times out of 10 uncurl and flatten itself back out, but if it doesn't, you can reach into the oven with using something like a tongs or something and just flatten it out yourself. Be careful as you're reaching in there, of course. Alright, so my piece has shrunk and is now laying flat again. So in order to have it lay flat inside the toaster oven, I just use this little piece of aluminum mesh, but you could use aluminum foil for that. And that looks pretty good. You'll notice that those colors brighten up quite a bit when it is shrunk, because you're compressing the surface area basically. Now to come full circle here, to go back to this twist that we made, I can use a singular strand of yarn thread and put it through and once I got my singular thread in there, I can tie it to my larger twisted piece. Okay, there you go. As I keep saying, if you have really good examples, they can really inspire kids to get excited about doing one of their own. This one was done with marker, just on the one side, and this one was done with color pencil, metallic color pencil. All right, so here's some ideas you can pull out in school or at home to help get your kids focus on something and able to regulate themselves away from a dysregulated state. Thanks for watching.